The Volkswagen ID Buzz has been one of the most hotly anticipated EVs of the last few years. In fact, of all the 50 EVs I've reviewed, this one has received the most attention from passers-by. But some people think it's ugly, so which is it? Is it the electric passenger van we've all been waiting for? Or is it a missed opportunity? But before we give you more details about this car, please don't forget to like, comment and subscribe to our YouTube channel. And if you want more details, check out the link to the full review below. Volkswagen has channeled some of the spirit of the original Type 2 camper van in the looks of the Buzz. It's another modern retro design. It has all the family resemblances to the ID3 and ID4. There are also lots of attractive touches that make this van look more interesting, like the two-tone paint option and these flashes on the rear pillar. The design feature that appears to divide opinion is this grille at the front, which sticks out quite far beyond the rest of the car. We like the appearance of the Buzz, but looks are subjective and you will have to decide if it appeals to you. This is a big car too. It's 4.712 metres long, which is actually a little shorter than Tesla Model Y, but it's over 25 centimetres taller, and with the cab starting so far forward, there's a considerable amount of space available. This is the shorter wheelbase version too. There is a longer wheelbase version planned, but we'll get to that later. Right now there are two trim levels of the ID Buzz available, the Life and the Style, with 4,800 extra for the Style. There was a first edition, but that is already no longer available. Basic Life kit includes 19-inch wheels, 10 colour ambient lighting, 10-inch sat-nav screen and wireless CarPlay or Android Auto. There's even a rear view parking camera, heated steering wheel, heated front seats and a heated windscreen. The Style adds 20-inch wheels and 30 ambient colours instead of just 10. There's a power tailgate, LED matrix headlights, illuminated front moulding and some other trim elements. The drivetrain is the same on both trim levels of this car. That's a 77 kWh battery and a 204 PS motor. That is the same as some versions of the ID3 and ID4. Paint choices include green, black, orange, yellow and silver, all of which are metallic. The silver is free, but the others cost £1,035. You can also get solid white for £300 extra. Then there are two-tone green, yellow, orange and this blue, but they're expensive, adding £2,790 for the price. There are 9 different interior choices for the Life version and 8 for the Style. Although you can't have every single combination of interior and exterior. That means there's a lot of different customizations available and there are a lot of options you can add on the top to add thousands to the price of this car, but we're not going to go into those because we'd probably take another 20 minutes just to list them all. This car is a Style trim but with the £515 21-inch Bromberg wheel upgrades. It has the £1,560 infotainment package plus and Art Velour comfort seats. This car has smart unlocking. We particularly like the way it works because if you notice, as I walk closer, just before I put my hand on the handle, it unlocked automatically. Let's have a look inside. There is, of course, tons of interior space in this car. This Art Velour seat material is a microfiber leather-like upholstery. There are no leather options, but Art Velour has a nice feel and is easy to clean. The seating positions are high, so you have these running boards to help, although we think they could have done with being further out when getting out of the vehicle in a tight space. This front cabin is a great place to be. There's loads of space, it feels incredibly welcoming, and the visibility is also very, very good for a car this size. You can see all around you, and these wing mirrors give you a view right down the side of the vehicle. Both front seats are electronically adjusted and heated. These are memory seats, but those have come via profiles, so you have to go into the menu to adjust those. Both passenger and driver seats have memory function buttons, but you can also associate these with profiles in the software menu. There are lots of nice little usability touches. These two cup holders sit on a door that can be shut, but it's quite hard to reopen again, so we're not going to do that right now. This is actually an ashtray rather than a coffee cup, so if you're a smoker, that's quite handy. There is a little secret compartment on the front here. You get this central area here, which it doesn't close off, but you have these adjustable partitions that you can move around. I'll put that there now. And it's not so easy to get it back in again. A bit of an idiot. So you can see this is actually another cup holder, which could be useful for rear passengers, although they also have their own cup holders in the back. Another thing is that this whole thing can be actually removed like this, so that you can actually slide a human being in between here if you want to. So this compartment's got a couple of USB-C connections. You can see there's an adapter attached to one of them, but it's also a wireless charger. So you can just slop your phone in there, which is really handy. And since this car also has wireless CarPlay and Android Auto, that's a really good piece of functionality. We also really like the fact they put a USB-C port in the door so the passenger can have their phone in the door pocket. You've got this tray here that you can put maybe some documentations, a map, a physical map if you've got one of those. Remember what those things are? And then there's a glove box. You can see this is a decently sized glove box. You could probably fit 2 or even 3 pairs of gloves in there, possibly even a silk scarf or 2. So these rear doors are actually slide them open like this. They're not electric, which is a bit odd in a car costing this much money, but there's a reasonably smooth action. We have to say that although Volkswagen has prided itself on the thunk of its doors, these ones have a decidedly kind of tinny sound to them. If you're old like us, having these loops on the side to help you in, kind of handy. That said, this is a pretty easy car for rear seat passengers to get in and out of. There's absolutely tons of leg room and headroom, loads of room for pretty much any size of normal adult. Just look at this knee room. It's also pretty easy to shut these doors from the inside. Just do that and off you go. Opening them, same sort of process. Just to emphasise, look at this headroom. I could be a good 5 or 6 inches taller and my head would still be okay. And for a change, this central seat is actually usable without a hump in the middle and quite a decent width. You could really have an adult sitting in the middle of this car, no problem, for a longer journey. You don't get any kind of armrest or cup holders here, but that is compensated for by the fact that you get these tables on the front seats for the rear seat passengers, and they've got their own little cup holder built in. Rear seat passengers also get these USB-C ports in the doors. One thing rear seat passengers don't get is any kind of control over the air conditioning, which is a bit of an omission. Some vans put air conditioning in the roof so they can have it. Obviously that central console is removable, so can't have air conditioning coming in through it either, and it's not in the B-pillars either. In hot countries, that's going to be a problem for rear seat passengers, particularly as the windows don't open for the rear seat passengers either. Another surprising omission is the lack of any kind of sunroof, at least as an option so far. But the biggest surprise of all is that for the time being, there is no 7-seat option of this car. There's so much space in the back, and these seats actually move forwards and backwards as if there could be an extra row of seats, but you can't get that just yet. That's a real missing feature in this car. That is one feature that allegedly will arrive with a long wheelbase version of this car, but right now it's a real missed opportunity. You do get ISOFIX points, but only for the 2 rear passenger seats. There's a little Joey flap here for a very small kangaroo, and larger pockets down here for your kids to keep their copies of the early lives of Ferdinand Porsche, or whatever it is kids read these days. Without that extra row of rear seats, this car is essentially a large estate car. Sorry, did I say large? I meant absolutely huge. This is enormous. With the rear seats up, you get a massive 1,121 litres, about as much as a respectable hatchback with its rear seats down, and more than any SUV. That is without this extra tier, which can be unscrewed and removed relatively easily. See, the screw points are down here, and you get these nice natty little cargo things that'll slide underneath. Also got this spare number plate, and we'll explain why that's there in a second. So you've got your curry hook here, and underneath here is a 12-volt power supply, and this is one car you probably would put a mini fridge in the back because you're going to go camping, you're going to go for a picnic in this vehicle for sure. The rear seats fold forward with a typical 40-60 organisation, and this shows one reason why you'd probably want to most of the time keep this extra tier in, because you now get a nice flat boot. Without it, it drops down and you've got this kind of lip here. Nevertheless, if you did actually want to take everything out, you get 2,205 litres of boot space, which only the Tesla Model X or certain versions of it could compete with, and that is including their frunk. So this is an absolutely enormous boot, and you can carry an absolute ton of kit in the back of this car. So our cameraman was wondering what this button was for. He thought it was for the rear seats, but it's not. It's for the optional tow bar, which is £980. You pull it, and out pops this. That gives you a towing capacity of 1,000 kilograms braked and 750 kilograms unbraked. I thought it's really odd that you can't seem to remove the rear seats to make this an absolutely huge cargo space, or at least we couldn't work out how to do that. This is still a lot of space in the rear, and with the towing capacity as well, it's a class-leading feature for this vehicle. Obviously this blind will take off, and while we're focusing on this area, you'll notice that they're actually already cup holders, so it's very clear that this car has an intention of being a 7-seater, but they just haven't released that feature yet. And talking about the lack of rear air conditioning for the first row of rear seats, if there's another row, they're going to be even less ventilated. We're almost always disappointed by the range available on the electric vans we've reviewed. That's because the van shape doesn't really lend itself well to aerodynamics, and aerodynamics has a major effect on range on electric vehicles. But the ID Buzz has a WLTP range of 255 miles, which is about the same as the original ID3 when it was released. That is with a 77 kilowatt hour battery, but then this is a van. I drove this van on an 84-mile road trip, which involved local roads, A roads, dual carriageways, motorways, and I achieved 2.7 miles per kilowatt hour, which isn't too bad considering the size of this vehicle. That means you probably get a real-world range of over 200 miles from this vehicle. You also get DC charging that goes all the way up to 170 kilowatts. That means that you can take 30 minutes to get to 80% charge from 5%. You've also got 11 kilowatt AC charging as standard, which means that you can charge all the way to 100% from zero in about 7.5 hours. Of course, most people will have a 7 kilowatt wall box, which will take about 50% longer, so maybe about 12 hours. But in summary, this car is capable of long distance journeys. If you can find nice rapid chargers, you can probably drive for 2 or 3 hours and then have a 30-minute stop, which seems about right for kind of British long distance driving, which isn't as long as, say, Australia or America. This car will certainly fit the bill just about. There are rumours that the long wheelbase version of this car will have a battery over 100 kilowatt hours, which should mean that you can get over 300 miles of real world range. God knows how much that's going to cost though, because as we'll see, this is still quite an expensive car already. VW quotes 2.93 miles per kilowatt hour, which is probably only achievable with a very, very soft right foot and an eco mode. Nevertheless, you can get easily over 2 miles per kilowatt hour, which means that this is a pretty practical car in terms of range. So the general controls are very similar to other Volkswagen ID vehicles. This is a standard steering wheel from that range. You've got all the adaptive cruise stuff here on the left, and you've got some media controls on the right. And as we've criticised before, there isn't actually a separate button here for just muting the audio. You have to go all the way up or down or go into the menu to mute your audio. This multifunction stalk does the windscreen wipers and also the lights and indicators. There is a separate button for this, but you can just turn this car on by pressing the brake pedal in similar style to a Tesla. And again, from the ID cars, you've got this rotating knob. You've got one forward for drive, another one for B. You can go back for neutral and then one more back for reverse. If you want to park, there's a button on the side, press that, and then you go to park mode. You've got these slightly cheap looking membrane buttons for front fog lamps, rear fog lamps, lighting mode, and you've got demisting, but also you'll notice this has actually got a separately heated windscreen. And you've got the play and pause buttons for your pedals, which is some kind of Volkswagen sense of humour there. One thing we couldn't find, and if you do know where this is, viewer, please comment in the section below on this video. We couldn't find the auto hold function on this car at all. So even though you've got B mode, you can't quite do one pedal driving because this car needs to be held on its brake at lights. So you see that there are some discrete buttons for the air conditioning. You can make it go up and down in temperature, and it's dual zoned as well. And you've got some buttons here for controlling the menu, but most of the more fine tuning of the air conditioning will need to be done through this 10-inch media display. Speaking of that 10-inch infotainment display, you can see the standard screen gives you sat nav, a media display, telephone, charging, and then you've got a little bit of access to things like the heated seats. If we go into that, you can see it turns on this area. You'll see that it's also got, somebody has set this to have a heated steering wheel at all times. You can see there's a lot more functionality for the air conditioning, and charging menu, which you can get to through other means. You can see you can change the level of charging. You can also look for different types of locations for charging as well. If we go back, Press this button, you get into the menu, so you can go into the radio, choose radio station, choose media, navigation. The full navigation menu's it's quite a nice sat nav, and telephone. You can actually make emergency calls because this is a connected car. If you break down or need assistance, you get 3 years of assistance with this car. Vehicle menu, various things about the interior and exterior. Quite a nice graphical thing where you can change the way the lighting. If you remember, this vehicle has 30 different ambient lighting setups, so you can use the basic vehicle just 10. So that's quite a lot. Again, the charging menu we talked about before. App Connect, you can see that it's got already connected to my phone, which is Apple CarPlay, Android Auto. As I mentioned before, wireless. It's a really good functionality, implemented extremely well. Different users. This gives you kind of seat and kind of other settings in one go. There's a kind of graphic equalizer there where you can even move the focus around the car, which kind of funky. Why they couldn't do that with the air conditioning as well is another question. A help menu, different kind of aircon settings there. What else have we got? Further settings, just for general settings for the car in general, and the screen. Lots of driver assist functions. We'll talk about that when we're driving the car and explain some of what you get for different packages. There's quite a lot in this vehicle for that. In that respect, software updates. So you can finally get over-the-air updates now with ID cars, which is really, they're finally catching up with Tesla. You can buy stuff, in theory, and you can just change the look and feel, so you can go a bit funky and red, infinity, eternity. Your choice. So not a bad little menu. We don't normally get app access with the cars we're loaned for review, but VW did give us access to their WeConnect app for this particular vehicle. WeConnect is not as extensive as Tesla's app, but having remote access to charging controls and air conditioning is handy. You can't lock the car, but you can locate it and send destinations to the sat-nav, as well as interact with VW's WeCharge partners. The map lets you know live charge availability and price if you're logged in to your charging account. First, we should really state the obvious. This is a big van, and despite being an EV, it's not that fast. It may have 204 PS and 310 Newton meters of torque, but it weighs 2.5 tons. As a result, it takes a sedate 10.2 seconds to hit 62 miles per hour. Having said that, the torque is still immediate, so accelerating off the lights is still pretty quick. With the weight load down, it doesn't roll in corners as much as you expect a van to. Once you get used to the size, the buzz is reasonably smooth to drive around town. Because it is rear wheel drive, the steering is light and there's no torque steer. B mode lets you drive almost single pedal. It's a shame we couldn't find the auto hold button to complete the experience. At fast road speeds and on motorways, the buzz sits comfortably. The high seating position gives you great forward visibility, and rear visibility isn't bad either. Also, as mentioned, the all-round view is impressive too. Overall, the driving experience is relaxed and comfortable rather than involved and absorbing, which is probably what you want from a family van. Although there are optional extras, we've been impressed that from the beginning of the ID cars, VW has always provided a strong base level of safety tech. That includes adaptive cruise control with automatic emergency braking, including pedestrian and cyclist detection. The ID Buzz has also received 5 stars from Euro NCAP, which is reassuring. There is dynamic road sign display, but we found that this wasn't always correct. You get lane assist and parking assist with distance control. A rear parking camera is included as standard too, something we consider essential in a car with a rear window that's as far away from the driver as this one's is. The Assistance Package Plus adds blind spot detection, 360 view for the parking camera, and lane change assistance, but that is an additional £1,420. Now we get to the elephant in the room as far as the ID Buzz is concerned. I don't mean the fact that this car is actually the size of an actual elephant. This is an expensive EV. The basic life is just under 59,000 with no options, and the style is 64,000. The warranty is typical for a European car with a basic 3 years or 100,000 miles. There's a 3-year paint warranty and 12 years on the bodywork. You also get 3 years breakdown assistance and the typical 8-year 100,000 mile battery guarantee. These are reassuring, but we still have to come back to that price. This press car with its options comes in at just over £69,000. When you consider what else you can get for that kind of money, you have to ask whether the Buzz is worth that kind of cost. That's why the lack of a 7-seat version, bigger battery or camper option leave us wanting for more. Only the huge boot space and retro styling provide unique features. Let's just take a look at that reversing camera. Not bad. You'll probably find yourself using it more than you bother using the rear view mirror when you're reversing. Just want to point out that this car costs $69,000 and that doesn't include a 360-degree camera. On the one hand, we really like the ID Buzz. The looks are a bit Marmite, but we're big fans of multi-sandwich spreads. They're great family features and the boot space is enormous. We also like the way it drives, even if it's not that quick. But that price is even bigger than the boot, and that will make most people consider it a smaller electric SUV instead. That means we're really waiting for the longer wheelbase version, which will have a longer range from a bigger battery, that 7-seat option, which we think is absolutely essential, and also a camper van option, which will really mean this van exactly fulfills what we're expecting from it. Please don't forget to like, comment and subscribe to our YouTube channel.